Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran, and in this video we'll be doing what's it like to play Mage right now currently on the alpha. I want to go over in terms of how it feels to play Mage, what is different, what feels better, what feels worse, and overall how do the changes going into Shadowlands alpha impact the way that mages are going to perform, and just overall how your buttons going to feel. I'm not really taking into account the Covenant abilities, and this is also really early alpha. So mages, for one, haven't gotten too many changes, except for one that's going to be major and controversial. But let's get into how all specs feel, from Frost to Fire, as well as Arcane. What are some of the changes for you to expect, and how they impact your everyday gameplay? Let's first talk about the big controversial change that Blizzard made from the talents that every spec is going to have to deal with, and rip this band-aid off at the beginning of the video. First of all, let's talk about the change to Shimmer. There's a good chance if you played in the last two expansions, you've grown to love this ability. Shimmer, a blink ability that lets you blink while casting spells, allowing you to reposition with certain abilities and even being able to kite enemies away while blasting them with powerful spells. Exceptionally useful and is the #1 tool if you PvP on Mage at any point in the last two expansions. I guess Blizzard felt that the mobility with Shimmer was way too strong, so the change in Shadowlands, at least for now, not finalized because we are in early alpha, and maybe Blizzard will go back on this change, which hopefully they do. But Shimmer right now only has one charge, so essentially it changes your blink, which is a 15-second cooldown on GCD that breaks out of stuns, into a blink that can be used off GCD while casting a spell, does not break out of stuns, on a 20-second cooldown. You add 2 extra seconds in order to be able to blink while casting one spell. I think Blizzard wanted to try to make the other talents in this role better for Mage, in order to make people want to play with other talents and even try to revalue blink all over again. Blink is an ability that people have used for the longest time, but Shimmer recently made Blink as an ability way too weak, as Shimmer became, I feel like, way too good. I understand Blizzard trying to bring certain abilities back, to have us play with abilities we used to play, or with certain playstyles we used to play, like how rogues have poisons, but mages, Blizzard is trying to get you to go back to using normal Blink. The class of Mage has been game defining with Shimmer, and the options and possibilities you can do with it just have been too strong. It's an awesome, powerful, strong talent. I think similar to when rogues used to have burst of speed, but burst of speed was just something cheesy. For mages, this is core to PvP, to PvE, and it's going to be really weird to go back to. Maybe Blizzard will adjust and make changes in the future to revert this change, or maybe make baseline Blink a little bit stronger, maybe close to what Shimmer currently is. So let's talk back about mages. We'll start with Frost, which is going to be the easiest spec to cover. Frost isn't all that different. I mean, in Battle for Azeroth, Frost might have or might have not gotten influenced by certain traits to pick certain talents, but it never really adjusted its build. No matter what traits you ran, you could either go for a big Glacial Spike build, or Thermal Void where you rapid fire a bunch of ice sensitive enemies. And while certain talents made you want to play certain talents, it never really truly changed the way you approach the playstyle, or try to rotate or use certain abilities during different times than you would. Essentially, Frost Mage was pretty simple, plain, and it stays simple and plain, which is great for anyone who likes Frost Mage. It's going to be along the same lines of anyone who likes Assassination rogues. Assassination stayed for the most part the same, which is the glory part of it. That's the best part of that spec. It didn't change. What was good about it and what worked is still good and worked. That's essentially all we can say about Frost Mage. With Frost Mage though, I mean, it seems to be one of the better specs currently because of its slow capability, especially when you're leveling or doing Tower of Torghast, or if you ever need big AoE. This seems to be like a really steady and easy spec to get into, since again, it didn't really change too much. Overall, I'd say Frost is one of the specs that a lot of you guys are probably going to fall back on if in case Fire or Arcane doesn't work out. I think the fact that it has a lot of slow capability obviously makes it really good for PvP. The fact that all the other specs also losing all the extra utility and some of the traits and essences and such is going to make, Frost, I feel like, a little bit ahead of the pack just because of the constant slows, the freezes, and the roots. So overall, I'd say Frost Mage is just one of those specs that simply hasn't gotten changed too much and should be able to stand the test of time. When it comes to Fire Mage, the biggest change has been losing your traits and essences that played with the Master Blaster playstyle. On one hand, it means that you're no longer going to have this powerful burst capability where you throw every ability under the sun while you're standing in a ruin of power, but it does mean you might have some customization in terms of how you want to play your mage now that you're no longer restricted by going certain traits and essences in order to play a very specific build. That's a good thing and a bad thing. Fire Mage feels very simple. You're still going to be casting fireballs and trying to get procs off of those in order to fire blast and pyroblast. It's essentially current Fire Mage without that massive combustion window where you master blast into fire blast into smithereens. But you still can't play those builds. One of the things I like about Fire Mage is the fact that now you have a lot of customization in your talents. There's a lot of cool talents in the Fire Mage abilities, like Pyroclasm, that's a cool one. I always thought that would be a cool one. Kindling can also be played a little bit more safer because, well, you don't have any specific traits or essences that make you want to play one build over the other. You can now play Phoenix Flames if you want to do better cleave damage as a mage, and it might be more meta since that'll give you more procs in order to get instant cast crits during your combustion windows. Of course, there's a variety of other talents that have gotten stronger just because of all those traits and essences fading away. Might give Fire Mages a little bit more customization in how they play, but Mage hasn't changed too much. With Arcane, however, we're not getting massive changes, but there are small changes that I think might play maybe a big role in the future. Some changes that I actually kind of like. They're not like the spec is staying mostly the same. You're still going to be arcane blasting, you still have charges, but there are small little nuances about the spec that I do like going into Shadowlands. First of all, let's talk about the bad one. You no longer have the ability of displacement. If you don't know what displacement is, this was like the reverse blink or the back blink ability, where Arcane Mages for the last two expansions had it where when you blink, you live like a shimmer of Arcane behind you from the area you blinked from, and then you can use displacement to go back to that area, which was really, really cool. It gave Arcane Mages a lot more of a hit and run playstyle in PvP, very mobile in PvE, just kind of blinking all over the place. So that has been removed completely. They made Arcane Mage the same as the other mages. It's all about the blinks. You either go for Shimmer or the normal blink, and that's it. You are a mage like every other mage. What the spec is different than the other mages is now Arcane Power is a 3-minute cooldown. I don't believe they made it any stronger, but Arcane Power is now a bigger cooldown like the other mages, with Combustion being 2 minutes, Icy Veins being 3 minutes, and now Arcane Power is 2 minutes. Hopefully Blizzard adjusted the numbers for Arcane Mage, so now they do better consistent damage, because currently in Battle for Azeroth, they really rely on maximizing the burst during Arcane Power, and by making that ability instead of a 1.5 minute cooldown into a 3 minute cooldown, which is a big button, it either needs to be really, really powerful, or the rest of your abilities that are part of sustained damage playstyle need to be stronger baseline as well. So my hopes are Blizzard somewhere adjusted the Arcane Mage, hopefully. We'll have to look at the final number changes because the final numbers are not going to be done until after the alpha and beta cycles where the final tuning is, but that's something for somebody at Blizzard to really take note of. Another thing that is different is Arcane Barrage, the ability that consumes all of your arcane charges, now at a higher level has baked in mana regeneration. So now, prior to this, you would go and burn through your mana when you have all your cooldowns up, and you try to Arcane Blast the living hell out of the enemy. Then you would Evocation to gain your mana back, and then you would conserve your mana afterwards. Well, conserving mana became a lot easier now with this change to Arcane Blast. That means that Arcane Mages can use their mana a little bit more often. They will be able to gain back a lot more mana with barrages every single time you use it. So that might be nice and somewhat helpful to the playstyle of Arcane Mages, especially when it comes to utilizing your mana for damage or for whatever it may be, like spell stealing, slowing enemies, and using other abilities. Another thing that changed with Arcane Mages has been a talent. It was a trait prior that buffed your Arcane Blast. The trait went like this. It actually made you play with how much mana management you had. Above 70% mana, Arcane Blast did a set amount of damage, and below 70% mana, Arcane Blast was cheaper mana-wise. This has been changed to a talent that works overall for the spec. It is not as strong as the blast itself, but it does provide quite a bit of extra overall damage to the mage from AoE or single target. The talent itself works like this. Above 70% mana, you do 8% more damage. Below 70% mana, you have 20% more mana regen. So essentially you can play with mana a little bit better, and where this talent fits into the row really does give you like this talent that's pretty good for single target, but also can be good for AoE now. I kind of like this change. Touch of the Magi is now a baseline ability. It is no longer a passive. It's something you cast on an enemy where you can load them up full of arcane damage, and then 50% of all that arcane damage you load up will splash to targets in AoE, thus creating a little bit of cleave potential and AoE potential from the single target focus that Arcane Mage can now bring into dungeons or raids. Mana orbs are also back, but strictly for Arcane. Right now in the alpha, you can make mana orbs on Arcane and then swap to another specs and use them. But mana orbs are, or mana gems really, are coming back to Arcane, so you can use them in order to replenish mana mid-combat. Again, even more tools that Blizzard gives Arcane mages to play around with their mana, whether for damage or for other purposes. And that's almost everything. Another one is going to be Palm now has 3 charges for Arcane Blast, instead of 2 when you reach a certain high enough level, which I guess is a cool thing, but that's just going to be minor, going to be really more for the burst aspect and mobility aspect. I guess for Arcane mages, the still will have at least a lot more instacast abilities to make up for the blink shimmer change. So hopefully you see what I mean. It's not a massive change that drastically changes the spec, but there are some nice little abilities that have some nuance to it. Touch of the Mage for that cleave, or even for a build up for extra burst onto the target, could be quite interesting. I like the mana playstyle with Arcane Barrage, and the talent that gives you extra damage or mana regen based on how much mana you have solidifies this mana playstyle and mana focused gameplay, which is really cool. But it's a talent, so if you don't like it, you don't have to play it. So while you lose mobility, you are changed slightly, and while we were hoping Arcane mages would get a lot more buttons for the basic rotation, I guess Touch of the Mage is at least something, and definitely better than nothing. The last ability we can talk about is Alter Time. That it's on a 1 minute cooldown. You will set an Alter Time location when you use it, and then after time elapses, or if you use this ability again, you'll be teleported back with the same amount of health where you were originally with Alter Time. I've tried this ability with other procs, like on a Frost Mage, to see if I can get some Ice Lances and Flurry procs. If you come back with those procs when you return, seems like this ability is mostly for mobility / defensive purposes. It's essentially temporal from the PvP honor talents, since temporal is gone unless you're Arcane now, which is an interesting choice by Blizzard. But yeah, it's essentially a defensive that mages now have to use in dungeons, raids, or PvP. But I heard that this one can be dispelled, so I guess we'll see just how bad or good this is in PvP going on forward. Another big talent change to mages is going to be Focus Magic on the same row as Enchantress Flow and Rune of Power. Focus Magic basically gives an ally 5% spell crit, and every time they crit, you get 5% crit. This is a cool ability that might be useful between groups in terms of dungeons and raids, but I wonder how many mages will actually end up picking Focus Magic. Enchantress Flow increases your overall damage, and so does Rune of Power, whether using Enchantress Flow passively or Rune of Power during specific setups for burst. Focus Magic doesn't increase your damage, but increases your chance to crit. It makes me wonder if this ability will actually get picked by a lot of mages. You could of course have a more selfish attitude and say, you know what, I need my extra power, and nobody would be upset if a mage decided to go for more damage for themselves. But will Focus Magic end up being picked at all? Will it end up being that much useful? I'm not really sure how I feel about this ability, and the first priority for me would be to kind of like take this ability off of talents and maybe make a baseline. What if mages had passive 5% crit to bring into groups? So even if a mage is not that great, at least they can buff someone else. That would be awesome, but I guess Blizzard will have to tweak this ability to adjust it, so maybe it might be on the same power level as the other two. It just feels like a weird ability, a cool design, and something I love that they're bringing back to the game, but I just don't really know how many mages are actually going to end up picking that ability to benefit the group rather than themselves. And anyway, that's going to be everything we have for mages right now, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Now, I don't want to say much about like how mages are going to react to this. Shimmer change is definitely going to be weird, but maybe when people get used to it, that might be something that will be fine. I think there's certain things that have been done in some expansion or another, like Shimmer, and I feel like this ability drastically changed the way that mages play. Kind of like how when Blizzard changed Outlaw rogues from combat rogues, it drastically changed the way that the spec plays. And maybe this might be one of those things that should stay. Maybe Shimmer might be something that might be part of the base mage toolkit. I guess time will tell. Maybe Blizzard will adjust it. They have been pretty good at listening to the community and trying to adjust the game, Shadowlands, depending on like the community's reaction to things. So hopefully they'll listen to the community, especially the mages that have been playing for a while, to see if Blink change and Shimmer change is something that should stay going forward into Shadowlands, or if that's something that might need to be reverted because of just the impact that Shimmer had over the last few expansions. I guess only time will tell, but you guys let me know that in the comments below. How do you think and how do you feel about the 3 mage specs available in Shadowlands? Do you like the changes? Do you not? Which specs are you thinking you might end up checking out? And which ones are you not really looking forward to? Thank you guys so much for checking this video. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see all of you in another one.